former AG Bill Barr, who let a lot of great people down by not investigating voter fraud in our country, has just endorsed me for president, despite the fact that I called him weak, slow-moving, lethargic, gutless, and lazy. Based on the fact that I greatly appreciate his wholehearted endorsement, I am removing the word lethargic from my statement. Thank you, Bill.
Yeah. Classic Trump.
Welcome back, Warriors. It's me, Linda B. Thank you all so much for joining me here today. Today, I have an exclusive interview with Kaitlan Collins, who is interviewing the former Attorney General, Bill Barr. And he is talking about, of course, Donald Trump and the hush money trial. But before we get into that, I want you all to remember to like, comment, share, subscribe, watch the video all the way to the end, and remember to hit that notification bell. Thank you all so much for helping me reach beyond my 20,000 subscriber goal. I'm past 25,000, and my goal is 30,000 by the end of May. I really appreciate you. Don't forget, you all can follow me on social media at Chat With Me, Linda B. I'm on all platforms with the exception of Facebook. So that's Instagram, X, TikTok. Chat With Me, Linda B. Now, without further ado, let's get into it.
I am joined here tonight by William Barr, who served as the former president's attorney general and who told him that his 2020 allegations of election fraud were not true, but has now said he will support the Republican ticket, therefore Donald Trump again. Mr. Attorney General, it's great to have you. I want to talk to you about how you're going to vote in 2024 in a moment, but putting the merits aside, I like how you're laughing about that. Putting the merits aside, because I know you don't agree with the merits of the New York hush money case, but you worked for Donald Trump. You got to know him. What do you think it's like for him to be in court, being treated like any other criminal defendant and having to be there 4 days a week?
I think it's real tough on him. I think a lot of the country sympathizes with him. So I think the longer the trial goes on, the more support he gets.
Well, I mean, he has claimed multiple times that this case is being brought essentially by President Biden. I mean, you know how this works and how the breakdown in this works. Presidents don't have any role in what a local district attorney, what case they bring.
That's normally true. And I'm not suggesting Biden is involved, but I think what they're saying is that this former federal official who's gone up to try the case, that this somehow shows a link. I don't know whether it does.
Yeah, but do you agree? I mean, you were the attorney general. Prosecutors leave and go work at other places all the time.
That's right. I think the impetus for this came from the New York prosecutors. I think that they're behind it.
And not President Biden.
I don't know.
He's trying to get around saying that President Biden is behind this whole thing. I can help you out. Yes, he is, because he knows the truth of things. But yeah, I remember her saying just a moment ago that presidents normally don't have anything to do with this, and Bill Barr said, well, they normally don't. He said they normally don't. Catch, I'm clinging to every single word that is being said here.
Yeah, but you have no basis to believe that the president would be in charge of an investigation that's being brought by the Manhattan District.
Well, I don't know. I don't think he's in charge of an investigation, but politics, this is a political case.
Your predecessor was brought up at the trial, Jeff Sessions, because David Pecker, this National Enquirer tabloid king, he got concerned at one point when he got a letter from the FEC, and he called Michael Cohen, then Trump's personal attorney, to voice concern about that. Michael Cohen told him not to worry because Jeff Sessions is the attorney general and Donald Trump has him in his pocket. Did Trump expect his AG to go easy on his friends?
I don't know. I don't know what he expected.
What was your experience?
My experience was, by the time I came in, he did not push me to do one thing or another on these criminal cases. Now, he tweeted and made his public views on things known, but he never talked to me about them directly.
So he did not have you in his pocket, you would argue?
It's not a question of arguing. I did what I thought was right.
And you never felt any direct pressure from him on what investigations the DOJ was doing?
No, he did not directly pressure me. Yeah, as I say, he was out there tweeting and doing things that were embarrassing and made it hard for me to run the department.
That sounds like pressure.
It wasn't pressure. It was just, for example, I had decided that we were going to not agree to a sentence on Stone that was 3 times longer than normal. And I'd already decided that. And then he was tweeting about Stone. So it just made it harder to make the decision.
Because it looked like you were acting at his
Right.
behest
Right.
on Roger Stone's
Right.
sentence. You know, what they were just talking about is this gag order and the alleged violations from the prosecutors here. They say it's about 14. It's pretty clear if you read the gag order and then you look at what Trump has been saying and posting about witnesses and even commenting on the jury here. What does a judge do to deter him? Do fines work? I mean, what do you believe the judge's options are here?
Well, I personally think the gag order could be too broad here, but I think Trump's, and I've said this before, I think Trump basically has the kind of personality that he's always testing the limit. He's always going further and further, and he's usually up against the line. So that's what gets him in trouble, and that's what creates all these cases like we're seeing now in the Supreme Court, very fundamental cases about our Constitution.
What Jack Smith has alleged in his indictment are private acts, and they did concede private acts can be prosecuted.
Mm-hmm.
In your view, does that mean that this case can move forward, at least in part?
No, I don't think the case could move forward in part. I think that if Smith thinks he can try the case entirely and establish criminal liability just on the basis of private acts, he could. But if he requires some official acts, then he has a problem. I think, the problem here is that the government, Smith, sought a very, he had this broad position that there was no immunity for official acts. And that's the basis on which it has gone up to the Supreme Court. And both sides are arguing this sort of abstract general idea. There's no immunity. And then Trump's people make it seem like there's immunity for everything, even things that are not official acts, like just if you use the military to do something, somehow you're immune because the instrumentality you use is federal.
To stage a coup.
Yeah,
not
I mean,
just to
that's
do
ridiculous.
Anything.
Yeah, it's ridiculous because the question is this something you're authorized to do and have the duty to do and execute the law and so forth? And the answer obviously is not. The president does not have the authority to wage a coup against the Constitution of the United States. He doesn't.
Okay, this whole thing with the coup, okay, they're stretching. Okay, they are really stretching. You all give me your comments on what you believe happened on that day. I know what I believe, and I have to be careful, as you all know, about what I say. But remember, it's a whole lot of deep state mess going on around Donald Trump. There have been plenty of other politicians well before him and still today who are still in Washington who are doing things proportionately far worse than him, and they're not facing any of this. These are all election interference. They are shaking in their boots because they had a plan for this country that Donald Trump is trying to stop. He always said, they're really after me. No, they're after you. He said, they're really after you, but I'm standing in their way. And note, those words are very true. I'm coming to find out that no matter how crazy and off the wall things Donald Trump said, over time, they have come to be true. I mean, all these things that they're coming after him with, weaponizing these alphabet agencies, is far beyond ridiculous and evil and hypocritical.
But what I did hear Trump's attorneys arguing, and this is something that you'll know well about, is Trump's effort to install Jeffrey Clark as the acting attorney general of the United States. And the point for why he wanted to do that was not just picking who he thought should be running the Justice Department after you left. It was because Jeffrey Clark was going to use the power of the federal government to pressure Georgia lawmakers to overturn their legitimate results. I mean, is that an official act of the president of the United States?
Well, that's going to be in that gray zone that they're going to have to sort out. And that's why I feel it's going to have to go back to the district court. Was this the president seeing that the laws were faithfully executed, or was this a candidate trying to bully and press a state into changing its vote when he knew that the vote had been against him?
Okay, here we're talking about right here in this particular segment right now, they're talking about the Georgia votes. And, was this someone who feels like things were not done correctly, or was he trying to bully his way? Now, I listened to the entire phone call. that hour-long phone call with Trump, along with his attorneys, along with Brad Raffensperger. There were several people on that call. This was not a sneaky call done at 2 o'clock in the morning. This was a call done with all the officials on the call, with Trump not saying invent votes, not in my opinion. It was more like, go find me the votes that you overlooked. There is no way. I'm good with the military. How did every single vote go to Biden? Every single vote? He said, how is that possible? In the full context of the entire conversation, not just that little small clip that CNN played, which I was watching CNN at the time and fell for their untruths. That you can make someone seem like they're saying something or doing something that they're not doing by editing things a certain way. But they wouldn't play the entire call. You have to dig a little for that. And it doesn't take much digging at all. It's on YouTube. You can listen to the entire phone call. And to me, it does not sound like he is trying to say, go make up some votes. Find the votes that you did not count. Fonnie Willis has a book, Find Me the Votes, not make up the votes. So they're really, in my opinion, reaching on this one far and wide.
Well, you
And
were
that
there.
has to be sorted out.
You were there. Which one do you believe it is?
I'm not going to, I'd have to see all the evidence and see the case litigated.
You're one of few people. I mean, you were up there, up front and close and personal. Was he bullying people and trying to get them to carry out his will, his personal will to stay in office? Or was he carrying out, election integrity and making sure that the United States has fair elections?
But I wasn't happy with the way he behaved after the election, but whether it was a crime is a different issue. And that requires the government to articulate the basis of the crime and prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. And some of these acts are gray acts. Some of these, it's difficult to say whether he was acting as a candidate or as the top law enforcement officer.
But which ones do you think are gray? Because you and I spoke right when this indictment came out, and you thought it was a pretty good indictment, a pretty solid indictment was, I believe, the word you used.
Well, I said, it was not an abuse, that it had a coherent theory. I said I didn't feel it was compelling, but it was coherent.
But he would say that on other occasions. You said
the president, the president had I think people sometimes took him too literally, and he would say things like similar to that in occasions to blow off steam. But I wouldn't take him literally every time he did it.
Why not?
Because at the end of the day, it wouldn't be carried out, and you could talk sense.
But just because it's not carried out and you could talk sense into him, doesn't that still mean that the threat is there?
No, I mean, I think I don't think the threat is there. The thing that
the threat's not there. I do not like Kaitlan Collins and their way of reporting. Clearly, they are one-sided, because Biden can say things like whatever he can say. What he said about the Biden had made a statement about, we have created an extensive election, but that clip of him saying that in America's history, and people were like, well, it was just a slip. It was just a slip. But when Trump says something, oh, it's not a slip, he meant it literally. I mean, come on, really? And the whole thing with the documents, this is a two-tiered justice system. It really is.
I worry about President Trump is not that he's going to become an autocrat and do those kinds of things.
Why not?
Because I don't think he would. At the end of the day,
what's the basis for that understanding that you have? Or is it just your own hunch?
That's my feeling, having worked for him and seen him in action. I don't think he would actually go and kill political rivals and things like that.
If the January 6th case, the election interference case, doesn't move forward before the election, is that a mistake in your view?
If it doesn't move forward? No, I mean, I've said earlier on, I would have liked to see that tried before the election, but I think it's gotten too late.
But you were talking about Jack Smith and what he charged. Is in some part that the responsibility of the Supreme Court, that they could have heard these arguments back in December. They chose not to. They could rule sooner. They may not rule until June. I mean, they have a role in this as well.
No, I think it was teed up for them, and they acted very quickly to actually take the case quickly. And I think it hasn't been well prepared. I think that the circuit court didn't do its job. It should have sent it back for a fuller record. And I think the And I think the Supreme Court is doing the best they can under these circumstances.
Last time you and I spoke, when we had you on the show, you told me that you would jump off the bridge when it came to it on who you were going to support in the 2024 election. It appears that you have jumped off that bridge because you said recently you were going to vote for the Republican ticket come November, which means you're going to vote for Donald Trump.
Yeah, I said that's what I plan to do at this stage.
You're saying you could change your mind, maybe?
Well, I'm not going to vote for Biden. This is a wild time. Who knows what's going to happen in 7 months? But I expect, as between Trump and Biden, there's no question in my mind.
Oh, so you're kind of suggesting maybe Donald Trump may not be the Republican nominee?
Or Biden may not be the Democrat.
So you would vote for another Democrat if a different Democrat was on the ticket?
It's hard to imagine that this party, the Progressive Democratic Party, would nominate someone I would support.
Yeah, I know you disagree with him, but I have to ask you about something that Trump posted about you this week, because he responded in response to you saying you'd vote for the Republican ticket. Wow.
So he said something quite interesting right there. He's saying that Biden may not be the Democratic nominee. More than likely, Trump will be the Republican nominee because that's who Republican voters or people who have gone to the Republican side now that they see this disastrous Biden administration, that's who they tend to want. That's the people want Trump, period. People who voted for Biden last time want Trump. They don't want Biden. And he's saying right here very calmly, it could go over someone's head, but Biden sounds like he's not, according to Bill Barr, that Biden is not going to be the Democratic nominee. He said, or he may not be. He has to say it like that because he's teetering the line with what he's saying. Or he may not be. We all know Trump is going to be the Republican nominee. He is it. He's the one. But Biden, they see they're not going, his numbers aren't good. So they're thinking of something right now. As we speak, we shall see.
Wow. Former AG Bill Barr, who let a lot of great people down by not investigating voter fraud in our country, has just endorsed me for president, despite the fact that I called him weak, slow-moving, lethargic, gutless, and lazy. Based on the fact that I greatly appreciate his wholehearted endorsement, I am removing the word lethargic from my statement. Thank you, Bill.
Yeah. Classic Trump. What's the question?
What's your response?
Well, I mean, obviously, what I said was that I'm very disappointed that this country is stuck with this choice between two people who I don't think either of them should be president of the United States. But given that binary choice, I feel I have to choose Trump.
But he's mocking you.
So it's not about me. I think that I've said this all along. If faced with a choice between two people, neither of which I think should be president, I feel it's my duty to pick the person who I think would do the least damage to the country. And I think Trump would do less damage than Biden. And I think all this stuff about a threat to democracy, I think the real threat to democracy is the progressive movement and the Biden administration.
The Biden administration or President Biden himself?
Biden's support for the progressive agenda.
I think a lot of people hear that, and the case that we just talked about that went before the Supreme Court essentially, and say, how can you see that and say that Biden is a greater threat to democracy?
Well, where are we losing our freedoms? How are our freedoms being constrained? They're being constrained by the progressive government. And, democracy, especially, from the Anglosphere democracies, the Five Eyes and so forth, the threat's never been for autocratic government on the right.
But how specifically is Biden threatening democracy?
The threat to freedom and democracy has always been on the left. It's the collectivist, socialist agenda. And that is where we're losing our freedom. Parents are losing the freedom to control their children's education. People can't speak their mind without losing their jobs and things like that. This is worse than the McCarthy era. Where is that coming from? It's not coming from the right.
Those two things that you just noted there, you believe are worse than a president of the United States trying to subvert the will of the people by overturning the results of the election?
I think a country, all the things together, like We're not enforcing our borders. We have open borders. We have lawlessness in our cities. We have regulations coming fast and furious, so telling people what kind of stoves they can use and what kinds of cars they have to drive, and eliminating cars and so forth. Yeah, those are the threats to democracy.
But President Biden is not in control of what some school boards across the country are
He's
doing.
using the
You can make that
administrative
argument,
what
but
are these
how
major
is that the same thing?
major changes are being made in our country without the democratic process, and they're being made by bureaucrats in these agencies.
Okay, pause. You cannot argue that Republicans across the country are not doing that as well. In my own hometown, there's a huge fight at the library over which books kids can read. This is not something that is a
There's
single
always
party
been,
fight.
do you think don't you think there should be some limits on what people are able to read
I
at
just
very
think
young ages?
I just think people look at what you're saying and they don't,
Well, some people
and
might.
maybe even Republicans who have concerns about what's happening with school boards or the culture, and don't maybe abortion even, don't equate that with January 6th and Trump's efforts. When you told him the election was not stolen, and he still went out there and said it was stolen and led a lot of people to believe that.
Okay, let me go back on her hometown, what the books, people are told what books the kids can't read. How in the world those books have inappropriate material in them? And he just said, don't you think there should be a limit to what people are exposed to at a young age? So they're okay with that being done to the kids and confusing them, and grooming them. But they're okay with that. See, these clefty lefties, they are a hot mess. She is a hot mess. She is working for her handlers and saying what they want her to say. I don't really, I'm not a fan of Kaitlan Collins, but I guess she's got to do what she's got to do to keep her check coming in. But this is clearly biased. What happened to the days when people just gave the news? She's taking up completely for the left. Whatever Biden does is not as bad as what Trump did. He tried to subvert the will of the people. The people that were at that march didn't feel like their will was represented. That's why they were there on that fateful day a few years ago. That's why they were there. You saw the signs that they were holding up.
Those things aren't equal. It feels like a false equivalency.
Well, I disagree. I think the country is much more susceptible to losing freedoms by the excesses of the left than they have been steadily, and that's clear. People lose their jobs. Kids can't speak out in the classroom. They have to go along with what the professor says in order to get good grades and so forth. It's become like a Stepford nation being directed by the progressive elite. The fact of the matter is, as I said all along, I agreed with Trump's policies. And despite the media, the left-wing media's effort to portray it as a lawless administration, it wasn't. His policies were sound, and we had victories in courts, and we defended them. I think that Biden is unfit for office.
So you're basically saying that you are voting because you want the Republican policies.
Well, that's certainly part of it.
Well, I'm glad you said that.
But I also don't.
Hold on. I'm glad you said that, because you told Geraldo Rivera last year, you may want his policies, but Trump will not deliver Trump policies. He will deliver chaos, and if anything, lead to a backlash that will set his policies much further back than they would otherwise be. You're even acknowledging he can't accomplish those Republican policies.
What I was saying was, if you want Trump's policies, if you're MAGA and want to make America great again, the other candidates will be successful at that much more than he will.
But
for the reasons I stated.
It's going to be Donald Trump.
That's right. I'm certainly not going to get anywhere near what I'd like under Biden, and Biden is not a great moral exemplar. Okay, and is he following the laws? Here he is giving away another round of forgiving student loans after he lost it in the Supreme Court, and he thinks he can get away. And he thinks he can get away with it by getting it out the door before the election. But he's not enforcing the law on the borders.
But those are policy differences that you disagree with. Trump, I remember also when border numbers were at an all-time high in the spring of 2019. So the idea that border chaos only happens under this administration is inaccurate. But I think
No,
people
wait
see
a minute.
that.
We had it under control because we had a program approved by the Supreme Court called Remain in Mexico that was fully lawful and had shut down the border. And he
But
came
how
in
can
and
you
lifted it.
equate? How can
Thank you. Tell her, Bill Barr, tell Kaitlan Collins. She always tries to sneak those little lies in. Well, yeah, well, in 2019, the border was also unsecure, even under, and then she'll go back into the next question. But I'm glad he brought that point in. No, 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 no. It was under control. It was secure. And then Biden came in and lifted it. Tell her. I hate it how the left does. The left-leaning media, oh, I don't I don't watch CNN, Communist News Network. I don't watch them anymore.
you equate the border is a real issue? I've been to the border. No one's denying that. But is that the same thing as what you said recently, which was that, the conduct that was involved with Donald Trump? You said trying to subvert and prevent the progress, the execution of probably the most important process we have, which is the peaceful transfer of power after an election. Name one thing that Biden has done that's worse than that.
Administration is a disaster for the country.
Is worse
As between Biden and Trump, I will vote for Trump because I believe he will do less damage over the 4 years. I believe I believe we're facing the most dangerous situation we've ever faced in the world. A lot of it invited by Biden's weakness. And to have Biden out there for the next 4 years, given all the threats we face, including handing the keys to the nuclear weapon to Iran, with a vice president like Kamala Harris, endangers the country. That alone should be reason to vote for the Republican ticket. But there are a host of other reasons. Our country is unraveling in many ways. The rule of law is unraveling.
So you want to put someone back in the position with immense power who you believe disrespects the rule of law?
Well, no, I think he will enforce the law, and it will have greater safety in our cities.
That's right, Bill Barr. Donald Trump will enforce the law, and we will have greater security in our cities, in our states, in our country, because things were less chaotic. The Republican Party is the party of law and order. But this chaos that we have right now, with people crying in these blue or Democrat-led cities because the illegal immigrants are getting more support than they are, and then, they've got lawlessness in states like California, where you can go in and steal, but you have $1,000 threshold, long as you don't steal anything above that. So these people are allowed to come in and break in stores. We have a country that is under siege, eroding from the inside out with these disastrous Biden policies. Biden is a hot mess. And cackling Kamala Harris. We got Jim Crow Joe and cackling Kamala Harris. The left progressive policies pushing that inappropriate material on the children. Now the children are all confused. Really? Is that what we're doing? And now they're looking at making the P word, for people that are attracted to much younger people, a protected orientation. That is where our country is headed under this administration. That's right. And what Trump has to offer is way better. Secure border control, lower interest rates, prices not running through the roof, and no wars. And people want to vote for Biden? Lord help you. If you want all of that chaos that the Biden Democratic Party brings, Lord help you. Lord help you. Well, that's it for today's video. You all give me your comments. Thank you so much for watching thus far. Don't forget to go ahead and like, comment, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell. You all be blessed. And as I always say, march on, warriors.